So I think we've had a great morning, thanks to the work of the organizers and Stephen from the Academy, and of course Deb, Michelle, and the entire team from the Academy. Thank you for having us. It's been a very interesting morning talking about the environment, the marketplace, and so we're going to continue that discussion and talk a little bit about how companies actually get formed, what the challenges are. And we have a great panel that we'll introduce in just a few moments. But as people are coming in, we want to take this chance to kind of revisit this slide that Gil had shown earlier. That is the pyramid of that process of ultimately having commercial success. And we'll have a chance to walk through this in much more detail. So maybe to start off, let's just introduce our esteemed panelists. And maybe starting, Michael, if you don't mind, on your end.
Sure. Michael Ackermann. I'm an engineer and scientist by training. I've been a serial entrepreneur for the last 14 years. Founded or co-founded 5 companies, 4 in ophthalmology, Oculive, Oyster Point, Tarsus, and then most recently Osanni Bio, where I'm currently CEO.
I'm Patricia Buehler. I'm a DWI, a doctor with an idea, and came up with an idea for upper eyelid blepharoplasty, and we won Eyecelerator in 2023 for Best Early Stage Company, and again in 2024 at Eyecelerator for People's Choice Award, and we have a Class 1 device that we're planning on launching in October, and I'm the CEO and co-founder.
Hi, I'm Doug Fisher. I'm a partner with Revelation Partners. I'm a fugitive physician, much like Gil, who I actually worked with for 14 years at Interwest Partners. I also worked in pharma with Centocor for a little while, and then I worked for the Boston Consulting Group, where I basically worked for Pfizer for a couple of years. But I've done lots of ophthalmology at Interwest, and I recently left Interwest, and I'm at this fund, Revelation Partners.
I'm Rob Scott. I'm head of R&D at Alcon for intraocular devices. I've been in various R&D roles in the med device industry for 26 years now, from Alcon to Ciba Vision to Ethicon. I'm trained as a PhD chemical engineer, emphasis in biomaterial science, and probably most relevant for today's discussion, I'm also currently leading the Alcon Seed Fund, which is a mechanism we created 2 or 3 years ago.
And Christine and I are happy to moderate. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Christine Sindt. I am an optometrist. I'm at the University of Iowa, where I've been there for 30 years. I am one of the first 2 women in the Department of Ophthalmology to reach the level of full professor. But more importantly, I think of myself as a clinical researcher or a serial inventor and entrepreneur as well. So I've had several startup companies and have exited from them as well as my full-time position seeing patients at the university.
And I'm Rajpal. I'm an ophthalmologist, cornea cataract refractive surgeon, practicing part-time in the DC area. And I was chief medical officer at Avidro through our acquisition by Glaukos, and then at Johnson & Johnson Vision through the end of last year. So for about the last 10 years, been in industry. So we're going to get a chance to talk again about that pyramid, about the process, and we'll kick it off with Christine maybe giving us an overview.
All right. Well, you know, that pyramid was fantastic. I kind of thought of things a little differently. I put this slide together, and I thought, you know, many of us have an idea. The idea is actually the easy part, right? I think of ideas all the time, and I frequently find myself saying things like, you know what you should do? Right? Because ideas are a dime a dozen. I have had ideas that I've presented at meetings, and I've had other people come up to me and say, I could have thought of that. And that's the truth, right? But how do you climb this upward hill, right? From you have this idea to executing the idea to exiting the idea, right? Because these ideas are like our babies, especially those of us who are clinicians, right? They're like these little babies, and when you first have it, it needs you all the time, right? You think about it, you feed it, you nurture it. But when you have this idea, you really do need to be thinking about how you are going to exit from it. Because if this idea only needs you to be successful for its entirety, you really don't have a successful idea. So from the moment of inception, you have to be thinking about your exit strategy. You do not want your baby to live in your basement. At some point, it needs to go off to college, right? And so the problem is that when you have this idea, there's so many steps. I am the content matter expert of my idea, but there are so many things I am not the content expert with. And so I think today's topic, we want to talk to everybody here about what they happen to be the content expert with, and then how do you move forward from that, and how do you crowdsource success?
Yeah, so maybe we can kick off with the early stage funding. You know, going from the idea to certainly protecting it from an IP perspective, and then raising money. So maybe if we start, Doug, if you would
Sure.
like to walk through kind of where you've seen that work well and maybe not so well.
So at 14 years at Interwest, we did a lot of early stage investing. And we do a lot of Series A's, sometimes we do seeds. The first thing that you'd want to come to us with is IP. So it's not just an idea in your head. You actually have to file a patent. It doesn't have to be issued, but definitely have a provisional patent on file. But then the more you can do before you get to us, the better. The first step I would say is, after IP, is build the business case. So you know where you think you're going to go. Then you want to start thinking about, well, how much more can I bring? Because the more you bring to the investor side, I would say you'll probably talk a little bit about this too, the more value you can get. So can you design a prototype? Can you land a molecule if you're on the drug side? Can you get a little preclinical data? Can you get some SBIR grants? Are there local grants at your university? Is there a little friends and family round you can pull together to try to build it into more than just what's in a patent and what's on some slides? And I'd say once you get, the further you can get, the more value you're going to create. And then when you start needing much bigger checks on the order of, 10, 15, $20 million, that's usually when it's time to start looking for institutions.
Rob, maybe you can add to that from the industry side and from the R&D perspective?
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking a lot about this session, and actually Chris's slide inspired me to think a lot about the validation part of the cycle there. I mentioned the Alcon Seed Fund, and I can say a little bit about how that came to be. In 2019, 2020, we actually created a very thoughtful internal ideation process in Alcon, so a really structured way for associates inside the company to bring forward ideas almost in a fast pitch kind of way, asking for a limited number of resources to drive a good idea forward. That was working really well. We've already got some examples of things that started that way and moved all the way through our pipeline, and we were led by 2022 to start asking the question, what would it look like to be better connected to, better engaged with ideas outside of Alcon, and that's where the Alcon Seed Fund came in. And so now I'm in the unique position where I sit in a setting inside Alcon where I see our own scientists and engineers come and pitch their ideas. Separately, I'm in a bunch of other sessions where I see external entrepreneurs pitching their ideas. And the way the two kinds of teams think about validation is strikingly different. But there are some common themes that I wanted to point out, and they're really almost tensions that both kinds of teams have to deal with. One thing that always comes up is the tension between being lean and being convincing and robust in your evidence for having validated the idea. I think a good way we found to manage that at the intersection of a strategic and a startup is to do these iterative loops of engagement. So basically we can, in collaboration with a smaller company, with an entrepreneur, we can kind of decide and jointly agree what would be convincing at this stage, and then a smaller entity does have an advantage in terms of leanness and efficiency, and they can go off and progress the idea and circle back. And that's been a good way to strike this balance between leanness and convincingness. We just have to watch out that we're not perceived as raising the bar iteration after iteration. The other tension which is really interesting, is a tension between being optimistic and being pessimistic. And I think generally the entrepreneurs that we interact with are very optimistic, and it's really good to be optimistic. Maybe internally we lean a little bit towards the skeptical side, and I think that's also good. And so we have to be really thoughtful in engaging with external entities in terms of striking the right balance. And then the last one is really, I think validation really is a point on the roadway, like we saw on the slide, but also at the end of the day, the idea is really only validated when you realize the value at the end of the road. And strangely enough, both those things are true. And so it's complicated to navigate all that inside Alcon. It's complicated for you guys to navigate it outside Alcon. It's complicated to navigate it together. But I think what works is to really focus on what is the value to be realized, what are the most prominent risks in the moment to realize that value, and then what's the evidence that's missing to really create a higher level of belief that value is out there.
So to continue with that theme of optimism, and following up on what Andrew presented a little bit, can you both comment on kind of the advice you might give to some of the startups, the entrepreneurs, related to the current challenges that we're all facing in the current marketplace?
I'll start. So it's tough out there right now, and it's been like this before. So if people remember back, those who are old enough to 2010, 2011, and then there were times before that, 2002, 2003. Capital was very constrained at those times, but there are ways through it, and it's being as scrappy, I could say, is probably the best word that you can be right now, and looking at all your options, because there are many there are more out there than you realize. Like even at Stanford alone, and I know up on the stage, people have used different, and you'll hear some examples, different ways to raise particularly that early capital. That's often the hardest to raise. But one, it will turn. I wish I could tell you when, but it will. And it's bridging that gap and finding those other ways to raise capital, the grant that you can get, again, that friends and family round that you can get. The seed fund, I think, is a great idea, and hopefully there'll be more of those from the industry side. But in SBIR, grants are still there. They haven't been turned off as far as I've seen yet. I don't know, we can see if anybody else has some interaction yet. But those are still things you should be going for, and they're a process, but they're worth it. And often in these times, things can take a bit longer, but you can bridge through it.
Anything you think is happening differently from the industry side?
No, I mean, I already said that I would tend to be more skeptical and more pessimistic, but I think I will, in response to this question, be maybe more encouraging and more optimistic. So I would say, if I think of the Alcon situation, this isn't really a new problem for us. Every year when we do the prioritization of our internal pipeline, we say we have more good ideas than we have dollars to invest. And so we are constantly having to really sort out where are the best opportunities. And so I think what that means, even in this environment and even in the former environment, is we're just going to continue to be open to and continue looking for ideas that are founded in a clear articulation of where is the value to be created, the value to be realized, what is the clarity around how to get there, and what is the clarity in terms of the immediate next steps to build more confidence. IP is obviously also important, as Doug mentioned before, but I think, especially in the context of the seed fund, there's a place and will always be a place for good, potentially winning ideas.
And I'll just comment that I think this type of meeting, and I think that's hopefully why there is such great attendance here, but the networking that occurs here, there are formal processes like the Alcon Seed Fund, Topcon has one, J&J has J-Labs or JJDC, but there are multiple ways that I think this connection helps.
So when we were talking about putting this program together here, Raj is like, I want this to be positive and optimistic, and I said, I want to call this walking through the valley of death. And he said, no, I'm not going to let you do that. So I actually sent him a slide that had those words on it. He said, no. But what I'm hearing from everything that you're saying here is you say, apply for the SBIRs. One of the things that I hear, the subtone that I hear with that is you cannot do this alone, right? You need somebody. I need somebody who's much better at a grant writer than I am personally. I'm an idea person. So partner with a grant writer, partner with people that have skill sets that are so different from yours, right? And that's really the way to get through this valley is to crowdsource. Sometimes you even need to crowdsource with another group so that you can get through some of this together. And so, Susan, Michael, I'd like you to talk about, creating a startup and putting a product forward, and what's your story? Because they're really unique.
Well, so I'm a cataract refractive surgeon that does blepharoplasty, and I'm a woman who's had blepharoplasty, so I knew what the pain points were both for the surgeon and the patient. And so surgeons don't like inconsistency of results. They don't like the tediousness of cautery and suturing, and patients don't like the long downtime and disfiguring bruising, and everyone wants symmetry and a good outcome. So I was actually at an ancient Egyptian medicine exhibit, and they removed excess skin by compressing it between two twigs, and I thought that would be a good idea. They do circumcision that way all the time. So I happened to have a classmate resident with me who was a patent attorney, and so we got a patent actually in 2014 for the idea of a clamp, which is a tourniquet-like mechanism, and also kind of a cutting guide for blepharoplasty, which, as you know, is just done freehand. And we really didn't do much with it. My husband is an orthopedic surgeon, has done some product development with Stryker, but we didn't do much with it until the pandemic, when both our offices and surgery centers were shut down. So that's when we kind of developed the idea, and we self-funded it. We did look at getting an SBIR. They're very particular, and like each couple of years, they're like, this is what we are looking for, and the year that they were looking for something was not really what we were all about. So we did not do the SBIR, and also got some advice that sometimes the SBIR can be a distraction, and there's so much regulatory around it. So we decided to do a seed round with friends and family, and it is a very difficult time to fundraise. But we wanted to raise $3 million, and in 3 weeks we raised $4.7 million to get us going. So we were very happy to have a lot of good friends and family, mostly friends. And so that's how we got started. We've done product development. We have excellent IP on new versions of the device as well, and we plan on launching in October our product and have surgeons start using it. We started out with doing chicken skin dissection on our kitchen table. Then we went to a cadaver lab, did 60 cadavers that happened to be in our town. That cadaver lab was in our town, and not just cadavers. And then we started using it in patients about 18 months ago. So we've done 84 patients, and we have 4 surgeons trained to do the procedure, and getting ready to finish up a pilot study so we can launch in October.
So as a practicing clinician, how do you go out and find the parts that are needed, like prototype? How do you prototype something?
Well, as I mentioned, my husband had done some product development previously, and that was helpful in getting early prototypes going and working with engineering firms and protecting our patents. And then really, we won a Ben Venture conference, which was a little Shark Tank type thing. And then you start making connections. And then when we won Eyecelerator, which was in 2023, that really connected us to a lot of wonderful people, a lot of people that could help us find the right people. So find contract manufacturers, find people that do marketing, people that can do commercial launches. So it's been great. We have a wonderful team. We've got a great team of advisors and a great board. So and Eyecelerator really put the fuel on the fire. So
yeah, I think that really emphasizes the importance of this meeting because you all are just people that I haven't met yet, but I probably need something from you. So, okay. Good, Michael?
Sure. So my story and career actually started in the time that Doug was mentioning, which is in 2011, which is when I started my first company, spun it out of a graduate program I was doing at Stanford. And I think there's a couple of lessons from that era that really have stuck with me and continue today. The first was one of capital efficiency because it just wasn't available, and so we had to get really scrappy about how to even just get a paycheck, doing business plan competitions, and perhaps like the Eyecelerator thing, just even services in kind that could help along the way. And I think that's very relevant today. I mean, I think there's the kind of recent phases. There's a big COVID run-up, and then the COVID slump, and now sort of post-Liberation Day. But there's a lot of companies that raised a lot and started spending a lot, and those are the companies that are in a really tight spot right now. And I think our teams have tried along the way to really focus on capital efficiency at every step. And not only does that protect the shareholders and at the time and reduce financial risk, but especially if there's a downturn, puts you in a lot better spot. The second area and sort of lessons learned at that time were really taught through the program that I was in at Stanford Biodesign, which really teaches innovation through focusing on unmet need. I think that the products that are going to be successful generally, but I think especially in a challenging environment, are going to be those that are going after a true unmet need, where there is a large market opportunity with something that's genuinely differentiated, right? So as Zach from RA mentioned in the panel earlier, the diseases aren't waiting, right? They don't know there's a recession. But if you're the eighth complement, anti-complement target going after GA, or the 17th GLP-1 or something, I mean, those are the things that are going to be particularly challenged right now. So I think what I believe at least will be more cycle-proof are things where there's large opportunity, something very differentiated, and where there's a large market. And so I think if you can stay capital efficient in those times. After Ocular went through a cycle with Oyster Point and Tarsus, Gil put up the stock plot earlier. It's, in retrospect, you can connect all the lines and the dots, and it's like, oh gosh, this was an easy story. Like, it works so well. Like, like all these things are hard. That was a freaking hard, that was a hard project. And, getting people to really understand the unmet need and really, designing the product that actually could be delivered in an eye drop for something targeting the lids is actually really non-trivial. And so, and embracing that capital efficiency through some challenging periods there.
Yeah, I think everybody enjoys hearing about the journey. And you've already described, Michael, a few of the challenges that you've already gone through. But anything, maybe Patty and Michael, that you can both describe specifically that helps everyone understand how you came about with a solution, how you came to a solution to it? Maybe Patty, if you want to start.
Yeah, so we've been developing this product, and I think being capital efficient is very important. I think early on there were, people that wanted to be CEO of the company and take over half the company, and there were people that had a $600,000 plan for marketing that we needed to initiate, and luckily we took our time and we really were capital efficient. We did a lot of things ourselves and brought a lot of things in-house, which was super helpful rather than going outside all the time, and that's made us very capital efficient. I think one of our challenges is, this is not a meeting where we're talking a lot about eyelid surgery, obviously, and it's a new category, so I think surgeons, cataract refractive surgeons, are looking for something in their practice, more cash pay procedures that they can bring to their patients. They're already doing premium lenses, they're doing LASIK surgery on these patients, and now that they've freed them up from glasses, those eyelids are hanging down and they ought to do something about it. And so I think it's a new category that we're going to bring to surgeons, that they can, really grow their practice, and there's a lot of patients are out there. There's 500,000 blepharoplasties done in the US currently, 2 million worldwide, but I think there'll be a lot more people that would do blepharoplasty if it was much more minimally invasive. And so that's what we're trying to achieve. And we're trying to be as efficient as possible to get to launch, and that's our plan.
Michael, anything specific that you would like to share on any of those companies?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I think something that's been helpful for me is just, again, trying to stay focused on what the unmet need is and just realizing when you're wrong, making a change. So maybe I'll talk about some examples where I was wrong. And so Ocular, the genesis here was there was dry eye disease and big unmet need at the time. A large market. We had a really differentiated insight, which is that The gland still works, and the glands still work, but you need to, and they're neurally innervated, and maybe we could upregulate the nervous system to do that. Our first idea was like an implantable pacemaker for the eye. Like, it's almost like embarrassing to say that right now. I mean, like, like who in the hell wants that? But like, that was our plan, like, and got some early, data that like, it was like, man, this thing like might actually work. But getting out and talking to physician and patient customers and realizing like, oh shit, like this is a bad idea. Like, this isn't going to work out. And Vance in the front row, like one of the people telling us, like, oh, that's really interesting, Michael. But do you have any other ideas? And we transitioned to something that was, a non-invasive, leveraging nasolacrimal pathway to upregulate that with what ultimately became the TrueTier device, that had some financial success. But if I'm being candidly honest about it, I think was somewhere in the failure category for commercially. I mean, we didn't get it right for the clinician customer. It was really clumsy to manage in office. It was awkward for the patients to use, and with Oyster Point, we're able to leverage a pharmaceutical therapy for that. That I think we got a lot better, where we treated hundreds of thousands of patients now, which feels really good. So I think listening and being willing to sort of as Patty said, these are your babies, but you got to realize when sometimes it's not a baby, it's just an idea, and we don't always have good ones.
So persistence, resilience, and willing to adapt. Maybe I'll share a quick story also. When I was at Avedro after regulatory approval, the biggest mistake I think that we made as an organization was initially expecting corneal cross-linking to be a self-pay procedure. And that really wasn't appropriate because it's a medical condition and it should be reimbursed. And it's young people. It's analogous to what we're talking about with myopia now. And ultimately went through a lot of challenges in that transition from self-pay to a reimbursed model. And what was really helpful was working with professional societies, AAO and others, that helped advocate for that. And so part of the learning was that you can never start too early in understanding what the business model is and starting that reimbursement evaluation and understanding what that commercial pathway is going to be. But Chris, do you want to comment on kind of your challenges also?
So the theme that I just heard was, there is no success without failure. And I think that's my favorite Brene Brown quote. I actually have a Post-it on my desk that says, there is no success without failure. And I don't think, you're going to think valley of death and failure, that I'm talking about a lot of negative things. And I think I'm one of the most positive people that I know, because from everything I know why I'm doing it. I fail, but I know why I went there in the first place. And I'm willing to just keep going over and over and over again and keep showing up for that. And the one bit of advice that I would have for people is know your pitch, know why you're doing it, and always have your pitch of your why available to you at any given moment. I should be able to call any of you up at 2 a.m. and you should be able to roll over, wake up, and tell me why and then wonder why I'm calling you at 2 a.m. And know your pitch. And let me just give you an example of this. I was coming back from Academy. We were in Boston. And I was looking for a molecule for a project that I was working on. And I did not need kilos of this molecule. I needed like a thimble full of this molecule, just a proof of concept. And I could not get anybody to talk to me. And so feeling a little down and dejected, I get into the Uber to go to the airport. And on my way to the airport, now Boston, the airport's like 5 minutes away, right? We get lost, and the Uber driver is driving around. Half an hour later, I am still in this Uber. So I decide the universe is trying to tell me something, and so he says, why are you here? And I gave him my pitch, the thing that I was working on. And the Uber driver literally pulls over to the side of the road. Now, am I being kidnapped? Maybe. But the Uber driver says, are you kidding me? And I said, no, I'm not kidding you. And he said, I'm the VP of Professional Affairs for this company. I kid you not. And he just likes to drive over every once in a while just to clear his head. And so we exchanged information, cell phone numbers. I knew a bunch about his personal and his family life. And I eventually did get to the airport and get home. And so the point here is that we are surrounded by abundance all of the time. constantly surrounded by abundance to make our projects move forward. We just never know where that is going to come from. And so have your pitch ready. Know why you're doing it. Don't feel like failure is, if you fail, it's just you learning something, and then move forward.
So the moral of that story that I took away is, don't worry about confidentiality. Talk about anything in an Uber. Share anything you want to.
Know your pitch, right? Which means you know your boundaries.
I would add something, which is the next step, which is how you can, failing is fine. Failing fast is the better way to do it, which means as you're thinking through, so let's say, yeah, you get that initial bit of money, and we're all saying, okay, you gotta be scrappy, you gotta be capital efficient right now. And you have to think about, okay, what is the key thing I need to prove, right? And maybe that might not be with your device, that might be something commercially. It may be running, just running a research survey, right? It could be something like that. It could be going into animals and showing something. But as you are thinking through how to take this to the next step, you want to fail fast, because if it doesn't work, you want to move on to the next thing. And it doesn't benefit anyone to work 5 years on something that you could have figured out too.
So in the last few minutes, perhaps you can each give, again, advice on specifically where you've come from and where you now play a role on this type of audience, a lot of R&D focus related to ARVO, a lot of the industry representatives, a lot of the finance community, on kind of this ecosystem, and where especially the companies that are presenting during the afternoon session and the breakouts, where should they focus? And what will attract the most attention? And again, how do you get past those kind of pitfalls potentially? So maybe we'll start with Rob.
Yep, and I'll also come at it from the angle of some of the challenges that we see as well. And I think a lot about the interface, as I said, between strategics and startups. And I can't emphasize enough that one of the opportunities and one of the pieces of advice I would give is be open to the idea that it's important to find some shared truths. Be open to the idea that just like a strategic may come into a situation, or a funder may come into a situation not understanding everything, the startup may also not understand everything. We often find ourselves in a situation where I would say there's a level of information asymmetry. I think it's fair and not arrogant to say that we understand a lot about the markets that these products are going into. And the reality is, I loved Michael's comment about biodesign. And yes, solving unmet needs leads to value, but also the markets aren't always rational. They're sometimes irrational. And I think there are some truths that we appreciate there sometimes. That can show up in the context of there may be a really innovative solution to a really important unmet need, but it comes with trade-offs that seem like they shouldn't matter, but that they are actually important to the customers who will use the product. It might come in the context of reimbursement and the dimensions of the reimbursement landscape that are going to complicate the entry of a product into the landscape. So that's one, being open to truths. And candidly, another truth is that sometimes there are irrational wants. Right now I'm in a conversation with someone we're engaged with externally, and like it or not, there are some irrational wants that we have to manage and build into the innovation plan. And that's hard to swallow, and that's a hard shared truth that we're currently getting to. Obviously, it's also important, and I highly recommend, in engaging with a funder or a startup, look for the synergies. Think about how to figure out what you can do best, and let the other party do what they can do best. I talked about the fact that we've gotten into a model sometimes where we do these iterative loops of engagement where we come together and agree generally what needs to be done next. We reset the shared truths, and then the startup goes off and runs for a while doing what they do best, and we come back together again. And then the last piece of advice was, hopefully many of you will find yourself in a situation someday where it's time to figure out what's the right time to exit, what's the right time to internalize the project at a strategic. And my advice there would be, I truly believe that there is a right time, and I truly believe that it's actually the same right time for both parties. It can feel like an adversarial situation, but I would really be open to the idea that there's a single right time, and it just requires the right level of discussion, the right level of openness to get to an alignment and agreement on that.
Doug?
So I guess I'll take it from a different tack. So as you're thinking about how you're going to present things, I think it's very useful to focus on the milestones that you're about to achieve and what that's going to tell the investor or the strategic about the product, and frame it in that way. You know, you have X amount of money to buy this, right? And then as you hope, and you won't get this sitting up on the podium, but you know, when you have your when you meet one-on-one with people, you know, listen to the feedback. There's a lot in there. You know, sometimes, yeah, investors will just give you some generic stuff about why they're not interested, right? But oftentimes, when you can have a good dialogue with someone, you can actually, you'll be able to pull pieces out of there that can help you frame what you're saying in a way that appeals to that investor more. Because the way I'm thinking about things is going to be different than Alcon. And then you can start tailoring how you're going to approach the investor versus the strategic. I think that's very valuable, and there's a lot of that can happen today, and anyone's welcome to come up and chat with me about anything after this.
Know your pitch and who you're pitching to.
Yeah.
Patty and Mike?
Yeah, so I think what you said is really true is, you know your pitch and have confidence in yourself and your product, and talk to everybody about it. I mean, we've gotten so many people who have helped us along the way, and clinical research organizations and advisors, and so it's been really remarkable. And I think just like your Uber driver, you know, when you bring it up, it's amazing. Everyone wants to help other people and have very interesting connections. We've you know, just having talked to someone in my town, and the fact that we happen to have a cadaver lab, and that my fellow resident happened to be a patent attorney, and you know, just these coincidences keep happening to us, which I think is very fortuitous. But I think it's because, you know, we're open to getting advice and saying our pitch. But it's been a great experience, and I think you know, I would highly recommend everybody who's got an idea to, you know, find out what the pain points are for the surgeon and the patients and solve a problem. And the Eyecelerator is a great way to get started with an idea, and it's really helped us a lot.
Michael, can you also comment on kind of later stage commercialization, you know, launching a new category, because you've had the chance to be involved in all of that, and also the exit that Rob was describing? Because a lot of the companies that are presenting today are further along. They're also commercial already.
Yeah, maybe I'll take those in reverse order. And I would say that I think building or planning for the exit is, I think that's a really tough spot to be in, because, you know, despite this sort of like 21 buyers on the screen, you know, they're all looking for something specific, and for your particular asset, there might only be 3 if you're lucky, or maybe like at most 5. And those companies go through cycles, so they may not be in a place where they're ready to buy what you're offering at the time that you know, need that. So I think really building a business that can actually stand on its own and be successful is the de-risked way to do that. You know, I think commercially, it's, you know, eye care is a relatively small sector, but you know, so you can actually call on a lot of physicians with a commercial organization that is a scale that a single company can do. So, you know, like a Tarsus is doing really well right now. But you know, I think you've got to have the type of product that can actually fit that, and I think it probably cycles back to again, starting with a need and something differentiated enough that could justify that. If you don't, you know, end up, you know, the product doesn't end up getting pulled into some larger company's portfolio. It does need to stand on its own. It actually does have to support a business that's, you know, of reasonable scale. So I think, you know, coming back to the, you know, back to the area of focus, and then, you know, continue to grow and deploy capital in a, you know, in an efficient and, you know, conservative way, you know, at every stage, including the commercial stage. So, you know, waiting and deploying capital when it's actually going to move the needle on revenue and not just scripts, or, you know, when you actually have the reimbursement in place, so that it's easy for the docs to actually, you know, they're not dealing with, you know, constant pushback on payers, et cetera.
Close it up.
Right. So I have one final thought, and somebody recently sent me a Facebook reel. And in this Facebook reel was a 16-year-old kid. And he talked about his struggles with his vision. He talked about the difficulty that he had and his concern for his future. And then he said, I want to thank whoever invented the iPrint Pro lens because I now have my license and I'm going to prom. And so with that thought, I want everybody to remember that your role from ideation to commercialization matters, because at the end of the day, this involves real people with real problems who need real help. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, and with that, I would like to call Vance Thompson and Susan up to